I was looking at some stats earlier on that said there's been increased sexual inactivity amongst young men, which is an interesting stat. It's risen to almost 31% of men between the ages of 18 and 24 reporting no sexual activity in the past year. So that's almost doubled in about the space of 18 years.
Yeah.
Here's an interesting stat. High suicide rates amongst men. Men account for nearly 80% of all suicides in the US. The highest rate observed among 45 to 64-year-olds globally. Suicide is the leading cause of death amongst young men. And a survey conducted in the UK found that an increasing amount of men feel hopeless and worthless and that are struggling with finding meaning and purpose in the world. The plight of young men. You talk in your books and in your work about how the role of a man has changed and how that this might not be necessarily productive for the health and well-being of a man.
Yeah, we've taken away their purpose. When you take a human being's purpose away, remember the purpose for men was to protect their family, it was to hunt in the old days, feed their families, but it was also to protect their families. It was to provide for their families. And what we've done in reversing everything is, although we raised up women, and there are certainly positive things about raising up women, but when we raised up women, we denigrated men. And I have 2 sons, so this is very personal for me. And I also see a lot of young men in my practice, young adult men. And what I'll say is that they feel discouraged, they feel purposeless, they feel diminished. And there has been something vengeful, I think, about... So the feminist movement was meant to give women choice and to balance off what was imbalanced in society. But there's something vengeful about it. I think at moments I feel like there's something vengeful about the modern feminist movement, which is, let's get them, let's diminish them, let's take over, let's push them out, let's beat them up, let's show them who's, something really vengeful. So so for me, the feminist movement was meant to create balance. It wasn't meant to set into play this other kind of imbalance. And more than, I think, 60% of universities are women now, as well as graduate schools. And so that means, and the studies show that men will marry at their educational level or below. Women will only marry at their educational level or above. And by diminishing men so much in terms of our education and professions, we've basically taken men's purpose away. They feel purposeless. And the other thing is, and I'm going to say, when men stay home to nurture their children, now remember, as mammals, we have defined roles. That is not instinctual for men to stay home and nurture their young. It's a reverse of something. And the issue there is that there's an inverse relationship between oxytocin and testosterone. The higher the oxytocin, guess what?
The lower the testosterone.
Yes.
So if we're staying at home bonding, then
there's a reason for that. So mammals, when they are nurturing their young, they don't want somebody mating with them. Go away, right? So the idea is that when a female nurtures, she doesn't want to have sex. She doesn't want to, right? So the investment in nurturing pushes away the investment in mating.
And this is why I've read so many stats around men's testosterone dropping when they become fathers. I couldn't believe that was true when I read it.
It's true. There was some studies to talk about how women's testosterone goes up. Women have testosterone. When they're out in the work world fighting like men, that their testosterone goes up. And men's testosterone, when they stay home, goes down. Now, what that's doing for sex lives, there's some research about, that is the next wave, which is, what does it do to sex lives? Because men have to perform. They have to get it up, to be crude.
Tell me about it.
And so if your testosterone is low, you're not going to get it up, right? Which is why there's all this Viagra and these patches and supplements and, because it's not instinctually normal for husbands to stay home and nurture their children. And that's the inconvenient truth. How that affects men's and women's sex life when women come home from their banking jobs and their law jobs, do their husbands not want to have sex with them? And, is that breaking up? So this is all I think this is the next wave of, we've reversed things societally so fast. And then we hope that our evolutionary bodily responses are just going to catch up in merely a century. And it just doesn't, evolution doesn't work like that. It takes hundreds, if not thousands of years to change our bodily evolutionary responses, right? Our instinctual responses. So this is, it's problematic. And also when men's testosterone goes down, they get depressed. So they don't perform sexually well. They get depressed. They feel purposeless. They can't do what they're instinctually supposed to do, which is provide, protect, hunt. We talk about DEI. I mean, why aren't we talking about DEI when it comes to men and women? Why aren't we talking about balancing the scales, giving men purpose again? And honestly, we should be talking about what happens to men when they actually do stay home and nurture their young.
Is there stats to support the idea that if you're at home raising your kids as a man, you struggle in the bedroom?
So there was some research I know that was going on about that, how it affects sex drive. But when your testosterone goes down, it does affect sex drive. Mm. We're just not talking about it. So I have anecdotal patients. I have a patient whose wife was a hardcore woman in finance. And, he lost interest in her. He had to go out of the marriage and have affairs with women who were more feminine, who were more, so he could feel as if he could play that masculine role. He couldn't do that in his marriage. And so are we going to see kind of a shift in society as a result of this? We're already seeing it. I mean, the other thing that we're doing is to young boys. Let's talk about what we're doing to young boys. This starts very young. We basically educate young boys in a way that really favors girls. From a very young age, we talk about being able to sit quietly and regulate your emotions and not be aggressive and not be impulsive. And these little boys are being diagnosed with ADHD, many of them just for being little boys. Little boys need to run around. They have a lot of physical energy. They have tons of testosterone. When you're like between 3 and 6, you have a surge of testosterone, and all you want to do is run and jump and play and be outside. And what we're doing, we're putting them in school, making them sit in circle time. So we marginalize them, we label them, we say they have a problem, we say that they have ADHD, they have behavioral problems. And in many of them, the stress that I talked about is the stress of making little boys be more like little girls. And that's where it starts. And so then they go into childhood, and again, the educational system favors the way girls learn, not the way boys learn. How do boys learn? Boys have attention spans for very short periods of time, and then they need lots of physical activity. So ideally, if you go to and look at the boys' schools, what do? They run the boys like running the dogs in the park. They sit for 45 minutes or half an hour, but then the boys get time off to run around. And then they'll sit another half an hour and then they'll run around. I mean, they have like 4 recess periods a day. And so that's really better for boys. And little girls have more of a capacity to sit quietly in circle time and sort of, they don't have as much testosterone. They don't have that need to run and jump and play to the same degree that little boys do. They do need to play. We're not letting our kids play, boys and girls, because we're trying to force left brain development on them too early. But we are forcing little boys into this box, and they're not doing well in that box. And then they're labeled. They're labeled as having behavioral problems, ADHD, and that label then follows them through childhood, sometimes into middle school, into high school. Yeah.
What would you change? I make you prime minister of the world. president of the world and you can fix this issue.
Oh, I would have little boys educated separately than little girls in the early years. In the early years, I would have boys' schools and girls' schools because little girls learn differently. And also, there's been a lot of evidence to show that in the early years, when you do single gender education, little girls will try things, will take risks with things that they wouldn't in front of little boys. And little boys will try things that they wouldn't take risks in front of little girls. Like little boys are more likely to try art and painting and music. Little girls are more likely to try STEM and math and, all these things that we talk about little girls should do. So the idea is that single gender education in the early years is better for little kids because they learn differently.
What about as it relates to men? What would you change to fix the issues you were talking about with testosterone and those kinds of issues?
Talk about it. We should be talking about it. We don't talk about this issue. How many times have you heard what I just said? People don't talk about the fact that if we're going to flip this around and have men be the nurturers, they're going to have pretty low testosterone. You're going to have to supplement their testosterone. And so, and also you take their purpose away evolutionarily and they get depressed. Women have many sources of self-esteem. They have work, they have children, they're relational. And for the most part, historically, men found their self-esteem from meaningful and purposeful work and also from protecting their families. So what we've done is we've taken their purposeful work outside the home away. We've made their purposeful work staying home with children, and, we've lowered the testosterone. So if you look at it and say, we're trying to switch, it's like a social experiment. We're trying to change something that's taken thousands of years of evolution to create in just, less than 100 years. And it's problematic. So what would I do? I would talk about it. I would have couples talk about it. I think they need to talk about the competitiveness. I think they need to talk about the envy and the jealousy and even the disappointment. I mean, a woman who comes home and sees her husband caring for the children, on the one hand, she might say, oh, my husband's so sweet and lovely, and I love that he cares for my children. And on the other hand, she says to her friends, I wish he was bringing in more money, and I wish he was taking care, I wish he was taking care of me. So it's problematic.
There was a longitudinal study done in the Philippines that followed 624 men over almost 5 years and found that those who became fathers experienced a significant decline in testosterone levels. Specifically, newly partnered fathers had a median decrease of almost 30% in morning testosterone and 35% in evening testosterone, which were significantly greater than the declines observed in single non-fathers. Moreover, fathers who reported spending 3 or more hours daily in childcare had lower testosterone levels compared to those less involved in caregiving. And there's also an impact on co-sleeping, where research indicates that fathers who co-sleep with their children exhibit lower testosterone levels than those who do not. This suggests that close proximity during sleep may further influence hormonal changes associated with parental caregiving.
Yeah.
One of the arguments I've heard before as to why men's testosterone dips if they're new fathers is because it's an evolutionary reason to make us not go out and cheat on our partner and take care of our kids.
Well, it's investment in it. So either you're invested in mating or you're invested in caring.
Yeah, so it's a good thing.
Yes and no, because you still need to have testosterone to have a relationship with your wife, a satisfying relationship. So, and unfortunately, that doesn't stop men from going out and cheating on their wives, because a healthy man would say, well, we used to have sex twice a day, every day. And now that we have a baby, we only have sex once or twice a week because the baby's so small. And a healthy man would say, that's enough. I can compartmentalize. Right? A less healthy man might say, I'm going to go out and get it someplace else because I can't get it here. So, yeah, there's nuance to all the questions you're asking. But what I would say is that testosterone going down a little bit when you have a baby in the bed is fine. But the kind of testosterone we're talking about going down when you stay home and nurture, we'll see. It could be problematic.
My last question is about devices and technology.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of books written recently and a lot of conversation around the impact that screens, social media, mobile phones have on children. What is your thoughts and philosophy towards raising healthy kids in a world of technology?
Well, I think it's the American Pediatric Association says no technology under the age of 2 for good reason. No iPhones, no iPads, right? You want to sit and watch a Mr. Rogers when your baby is 2 together, a rerun of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, that's fine, but no technology. After that, you want to really regulate that technology. Now, why is that important? Because technology raises dopamine levels in your brain, which is why adults get addicted to it too. It's very addictive. And the problem is that with adults, when you look at technology, it does raise your dopamine, but there was some research to show that technology raises the dopamine in an adolescent's brain tenfold to that of. So in other words, it would be like if you smoked a joint, it would make you high. If an adolescent smoked the same joint, it would make them 10 times higher. It has to do with the sensitivity of the brain to dopamine and the lack of regulation. So the prefrontal cortex is the part of the brain that regulates emotions, and it's not fully developed till about 25. So all that dopamine that has to be regulated is more easily regulated in an adult than an adolescent. So it's not good because it leads to addiction. Okay. It's not good because particularly social media, but all kinds of technology, they get the amygdala going. Remember that little almond-shaped stress-regulating part of the brain? It turns on the stress reaction. Which you don't want to do chronically. There's lots of problems with that. And in the case of social media, with adolescents, particularly adolescent girls, it takes advantage. I mean, you have to say that this was invented to take advantage. It's not a coincidence. It's manipulatively created because the reason that it's so bad for teenage girls' brains is because the self-consciousness, the perfectionism, is all the brain in a hyper-alert state of stress and fear. You're putting those girls and boys into a hyper-vigilant state of fear and stress, right? I have to be perfect. I don't look as good as them. My dress isn't as pretty. So you're putting children into a fear state, and then they can't separate from the device. It's like there was a movie, I think it was called Inception, where you could get stuck in a paradigm. You could get stuck in this fantasy, right, in a virtual reality. In a way, they get trapped in this paradigm of perfectionism, social isolation, self-consciousness, which is all the brain in a hyper-vigilant state of stress.
Anxiety.
So not good at all. Not good for adults, much worse for adolescent brains.
What is the most important thing we should have talked about today that we didn't talk about so far?
I think we talked about a lot, but I think, what I would say is that presence is just so critical to children, and there's no replacement. This idea that we have as a society that caregiving of children is something that can be generically assigned to others, that you can delegate other things to others, delegate your accounting, delegate your laundry, delegate your cooking. If you're a CEO, delegate everything you can, but spend time with your children. Your relationship with them, their mental health depends upon it. And that's not something we say. We say, work, 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 make more money, everybody work, 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 and your children will be just fine. Well, clearly, our children are not just fine.
What do I do as an employer? I employ lots of people, and I'm thinking, shit, do I need to give people 3 years off when they have a kid? Is that the...
Well, in my opinion, give them as much time off as you possibly can.
Men and women?
Men and women, whoever is the primary attachment figure. I would say whoever's going to really be responsible for caring for that child. But then give them options. Give them choices of how to work in the years that their children are very young. Give them options to work part-time or to share a job, or to work from home half of the week so they don't have to leave their child and still they can work. Give them choices and options that allow them for some flexibility and control. If you know that an employee has young children, accept the fact that, they may need to leave early and not stay as late as other people who don't have children. And that's going to make the people who don't have children angry. And you know what? Tough. Because that's what those children need. Life isn't fair. It's not always fair. And if you want to have a child, you too could have that. But the idea of exact parity, tough, because that's what society needs. It needs healthy children. If you're going to have a child and you need to leave every day at 4, so you're home for your children. So flexibility, control, options, as much time off in the beginning as possible.
If you love the Diary of a CEO brand and you watch this channel, please do me a huge favor. Become part of the 15% of the viewers on this channel that have hit the subscribe button. It helps us tremendously, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests.